I'm Darrell, and I've been asked here today to talk to you about Warhammer and to try and simplify the rules to a very complicated yet fun and enjoyable game. Okay, so this is the 8th edition core rulebook because I am too poor to afford 9th, which has only just come out, but most of the changes have been released separately, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to print them off and stick them in my book so I don't have to change it. So yeah, there's 3 sort of different games that you can play within Warhammer. There is 40k, which is the main one that people play, undergone a lot of additions, loads of armies, loads of different things in there. There is 40k First Strike, which is a really good beginner game. You only need 100 points worth of miniatures to play, and if you get First Strike, which is what I got here, you get 2 different kill team armies, and then you can play with them. So First Strike comes with Space Marines and Death Guard. I kept the Death Guard. I split the box with my friend who got Space Marines. But that's a really good beginner one because First Strike I think cost us £20, so it was £10 each, and we got everything we needed to get started in the game. And the other one is Age of Sigmar. Now most people don't love Age of Sigmar. I do, because I'm a massive fantasy nerd, and whereas 40k is more science fiction based, more apocalyptic, Age of Sigmar is more fantasy based, and I feel like the rules are a little more simplified than they are in 40k. So we're going to talk about the rules. I'm going to talk about the game rules and the different movements and stuff in play. So there is different phases in the game. There is 6 different phases, and the first one is the movement phase, where you get to move all of your models. The models in question will have a data sheet that tell you how many inches they can move. If you move over terrain, you lose inches because you've obviously gone over the terrain. If you have to go around, so you have to draw a straight line. So you'll need a tape measure and models and a friend to play with. But movement phase, so you can move into the enemy's territory, you can stay where you are and ready your units. You can advance, where you roll a d6 and you add that to the movement that is written in your data sheet. That's good for combat-based models like poxwalkers that can't shoot or anything like that, so they're useless unless they are up front in the fight, so you want them up as quickly as possible. There is falling back, so if you are trapped in combat with another player, you can choose to fall back in your movement phase and remove yourself from that combat, which then opens up shooting for you on the enemy models because you're not allowed to shoot into a combat that you are in. And I think, oh yeah, flying units. Flying units can fly over the tops of other units, they can fly over terrain and they don't lose any inches for it, but it has to have the flyer keyword, it can't just look like it should fly. And I think that's it for movement. The second phase in the game is called the psychic phase. So this is where a model that has a keyword of psyker can use, you roll, and if you get above the warp charge, you manifest a psychic ability. So whether it's 5 or 6, you roll 2d6, if you get above it, then it comes into play. The main one used is smite. I think everything gets smite, which is just doing instant damage to other people. However, with psychers, they can turn the tide of the game because the psychic movement is before shooting, before melee, before anything. You can psychic into combat because you are targeting the enemy players specifically. You can boost them, you can add buffs, you can debuff the enemy, but if you roll a double 1 or a double 6 on your 2d6, the psychic ability doesn't go off and you take damage from the demonic entity that you are summoning it from. So there are armies that are more psychic heavy, like the Grey Knights, and then there are armies that don't really have psychers, like Khorne in Sigmar, and the Custodies don't really have that many, but that's because we're severely lacking in models. Yeah, you can choose your psychic powers before the game. You can only change it mid-game if it says that you can. There are certain models that can change, otherwise you have to stick with what you've chosen. And then I think that wraps up Psychic. It's a short little phase, but it can turn the tide if you roll well enough. third phase of a Warhammer game is the shooting phase, which is the best phase for armies like Necrons, some Space Marine armies, things like that that very much rely on shooting. Okay, so the first thing you do is you choose your unit and you choose who you are shooting at. You check that your guns have the range to actually shoot at the unit that you want to. You draw your tape measure that you have earlier, and you do that. And then you choose which ranged attack, because some models will have different guns, different options. So you'll choose which gun you're firing with. Then you roll your to hit. Now you're on your data sheet for your characters, or your models or your units, it says your hit modifier and your wound. The hit modifier and your ballistic skill, weapon skill. So you roll your to hit. So in Sigmar it literally says to hit +4, which means 4+, you hit them. Whereas in 40k, a little more complicated, it is your ballistic skill. If you hit, then you make a wound roll. That's where it gets slightly more complicated, so I'm going to gloss over it very quickly. Basically, if you are stronger than they are tough, it makes it easier for you to wound them, vice versa. It makes it harder for you to wound them, and if you're the same strength and toughness at an equal number, you're in a standard 4+ to wound. If the wound gets through, they then make a saving throw, which will be on the saves. Those things have a save of 4, 5, above sort of thing. If they roll, they get a 4, then they save the wound, they don't take any damage. You will have AP on guns, which will be like -1, -2, which pushes their save higher, so you like using strong AP against especially heavy units. So if you have AP -2, their save is 4, you've now pushed it to a 6. They need that to survive. There are things like the Death Guard, which have a ability called Disgustingly Resilient, and that means that after the save has happened, if they've not saved a wound, they can roll again, and on a 5+, they don't take the wound, because they're disgustingly resilient to it, which makes it really fun when you're playing against friends and you just tank everything they throw at you, and they just cry in Necron. But yeah, do that with all of your models until the shooting commences. You are the only one shooting in that turn, because it is your turn in that phase. And then, once you've shot with everything, you go on to phase 4. Fourth phase in the game is called the charge phase. Very simple. This is where if you have units that you want to charge into other units to get them into combat, you do that. So when you are charging, you roll 2d6. If you have a special ability like a Gene Stealer that gives you a bonus to charging, like a +1 or a +2, then you'd add that. So say I roll 2d6, I got 7, I can move 7 inches. If I can get into the charging range, which is within ½ an inch of the enemy models, then I make the charge. If I don't, I can't, I have to stay where I am. You can drop a command point, which is just, you get standard 12 now for 9th edition rules. You can drop that and you can fire a thing called Overwatch, which basically means that if a charging unit is coming at you, you can, if you are being charged, shoot them. There are armies like the Tau, which have kept it in because they are appalling in melee, so they have to shoot because that is the purpose of their army. But once you've charged, you get them into combat, and then that takes you directly into phase 5. Fifth phase is the fight phase, or the combat phase. So if you are in combat with someone, say you've just charged them, then you can choose to attack them with your melee weapons, unless you have a pistol. Pistols can shoot in a combat scenario. So you choose which unit you're fighting with. If you have other models that are within 3 inches of the combat, they can pile in, and basically you can just drag them into the attack, help you win. You choose your melee weapons, much as you do with the shooting. You roll your to hits, you roll your to wounds, you check your strength versus toughness, they roll saves. It's pretty much the same thing, but with melee weapons. And then, after the fighting has commenced, and after everything's been attacked, you can then consolidate up to 3 inches so you don't lose the distance between your models. Because if your models are a certain distance away from each other, they're in the same unit, then you lose consolidation and you have to remove the model. So this lets you move them up to 3 inches closer so that you just don't lose anything because you've killed stuff. And that's sort of the fight phase, and then that's the end of all of your fun rolls, and then it's just a very short phase 6. And phase 6 is called the morale phase. So you look at your leadership, and say you have a 9 or an 8. If you've lost a certain number of models, then you roll, you add the number of models you lost, and if it matches your leadership, I think you're okay. If it goes above, you lose 1. If it goes above by 2, you lose 2, so on and so forth. It's basically how brave your unit is after seeing all their friends die brutally in a close combat situation. Unless you're Necrons, in which case you can just keep coming back, because the animation protocol is horrible to play against. But that's all 6 phases, and then it's your friend's turn, so it's your turn to cry. Thank you for watching. I've been, and still am, Darrell. I'm glad I've been able to talk about Warhammer with you. And I hope that you get involved. I know it sounds complicated, there's a lot of phases, but overall it's a lot of fun. They go by quicker than you think, and the game only lasts 5 to 6 rounds anyway. But make sure to buy your models. Buy the books, like this one. If you are confused and have not managed to simplify it enough, get yourself a core rulebook. If you buy Dark Imperium, which is the main box set for Games Workshop at the minute, it contains Necrons and Space Marines. It will come with a core edition, core 9th edition rulebook, and then you can check the rules for yourself. It goes into slightly more detail, but I just didn't want to throw everything at you at once. But come back next time, I'll be talking about miniatures and nerding out.